The oceans now teem with an astounding variety of living creatures, but still, the day's work was far from done. As amazing as the aquatic creatures are, God would create an equally amazing group of creatures, creatures who could defy gravity itself, who would dominate the air, creatures who could fly.
Then God said, "Let the birds fly above the earth, across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created every winged creature according to its kind, and God saw that it was good.
All birds are in the kingdom Animalia and in the phylum Chordata because they have a spinal cord, the vertebra, and they're in the class Aves, which is Latin for bird, and from which we get the word aviation, the art and science of flying. Birds are the world's flying vertebrates. Insects are the flying invertebrates. A bird is defined as an egg-laying, warm-blooded vertebrate with 2 legs, a beak, feathers, and wings. Warm-blooded, by the way, means that the creature's blood remains at a constant temperature regardless of how cold it is outside. That's how they stay comfortable. Birds and people are examples, but they need feathers or fur or coats to stay comfortable. Cold-blooded, on the other hand, means that within certain limits, the creature's blood temperature gets colder the colder it gets outside. That's how they stay comfortable. Things like fish and lizards are examples. One design is not superior or more advanced than the other. They are simply 2 different designs to regulate a creature's temperature. Most birds have relatively large eyes. Some have eyes that can look directly behind them. And most have an additional eyelid, a transparent membrane that protects their eye while flying or blocking water when swimming or magnifying images to see better. Birds of prey can see 8 times the detail that people can, meaning that a hawk can clearly see a small crouching rabbit 1 mile away. Many birds can see in color, and some, like the hummingbird, can see colors in the ultraviolet range, which are completely invisible to us. Birds have ear openings on the sides of their heads that have varying degrees of sensitivity. Owls have particularly keen hearing, picking up the faintest skirring of mice in the grass. Incidentally, these feathery tufts are not the owl's ears. Their ears, like all birds, are hidden on the sides of their heads. When a bird lands to perch, their weight presses down on a middle tendon, causing their foot to snap shut and lock around the perch. That's why a bird doesn't fall off the perch when they're sleeping. They're locked on. They must make a conscious effort to contract their toe muscles and spring open their foot in order to fly away. But the most unique characteristic of birds are their wings, the instruments of flight. Bird wings are curved airfoils, just like modern airplane wings. As they fly, air rushes over the curved top, creating a slight vacuum right over the top of the wing. The entire wing lifts up, trying to fill that little vacuum. Thus, the bird, or an airplane, is constantly being pulled upward as long as air rushes over that curved wing. A robin flies about 25 miles an hour, falcons and ducks about 50 miles an hour, and racing pigeons at 110 miles an hour. Peregrine falcons have been clocked at dive speeds exceeding 150 miles an hour. For men to fly, flapping like birds is beyond the human capacity of their muscles. We flew when we invented the airfoil and the propeller. Birds basically have 3 kinds of feathers: fluffy, downy feathers to keep them warm, body feathers to cover the down and to help streamline the bird, and flight feathers that are located on the wings and on their tail. A feather is made of a central shaft with veins attached to the shaft. Tens of thousands of very small Velcro-like barbs are attached to the veins. They all hook together to form a smooth, water and air-resistant surface. Birds often preen to re-zip their disconnected barbs or to oil the feathers with body oil they get from a special gland. A single feather is made of more than 1 million different parts, and a swan has over 25,000 feathers. Birds have no teeth, and it's uncertain whether they're even able to taste anything that they eat or drink. But when they do eat, their food passes down their esophagus or gullet into the crop, where it is stored waiting for digestion. The food moves into the bird's first stomach, where food is broken down by strong chemicals, and then passed to their second stomach, known as the gizzard. The gizzard is a muscular bag that grinds up the food with the help of small stones that the bird occasionally swallows. A gizzard acts as the bird's teeth and can grind hard walnut shells into mush. A bird will digest fruit in about 15 minutes. Nuts take several hours. Birds have a system of lungs and air sacs for efficient breathing when flying. Their breathing can speed up to 20 times their normal resting rate, a pace that would cause any of us to pass out. Their tiny four-chambered heart is actually 50 to 100% larger than land animals of a similar size. The resting heart rate for a chickadee is about 500 beats per minute and increases to 1,000 beats per minute when flying. Birds appear to be largely governed by instinct, but not completely. They can learn from new experiences, and they outperform many similar-sized land animals in many laboratory intelligence tests. Crows and ravens are the recognized intellectuals of the bird world. Nearly all birds sing, or at least call, but not all are very musical. Birds use a syrinx to sing. It is similar to our larynx. They tend to sing better on cloudy days than on sunny days, in the woods than in the open areas, and the robin sings its best just before it rains. To the best of our knowledge, they sing for attracting mates, to establish territory, and maybe just to rehearse their songs. A robin's territory, for example, is typically about a quarter acre, or about 2 house lots. There are no doubt other reasons why birds sing their pleasing songs, which we have simply yet to discover. We will listen to many of these songs when we get to the individual bird classifications segment. The bones of a bird are generally hollow, unusually strong, and reinforced with light internal struts. The frigate bird has a 7-foot wingspan, yet all of its bones combined weigh less than its feathers. Most animals have 7 neck bones, even a giraffe, but a heron has 16 and a swan has 25. But the most unusual bone on birds is the large keel bone. This blade-like bone provides the anchor for the large pectoral muscles responsible for initial liftoff. Birds live in the warmer south during the cold winter months. They use this time to find a mate and to fatten up for the journey north during the springtime. Research indicates that many birds mate for life, including some hawks, owls, crows, cranes, and doves. Storks have a tendency to return to a previous nest site, so the same pairs tend to reform every spring. Because of this and their tireless effort as parents, storks have a reputation for marital faithfulness and are a commonly recognized symbol for the birth of a new baby. Most migrating birds leave their southern homes and fly north around February or March to build nests and to lay eggs. Nests can be long tunnels running underground or carefully woven plants that form intricate baskets. The American goldfinch builds nests so tight they hold water. The most familiar bird nest is called the cup nest, a bowl-shaped collection of twigs, mud, seed, hair, spider's web, feathers, strings, foil, paper, basically whatever you can get your beak on. Some eagle nests weigh more than your family car, 2 tons. The smallest nest is made by the bee hummingbird and is the size of a thimble. Although a few birds will reuse their old nests, most do not. Robins, however, will return to their old neighborhood and build a new nest from scratch. Birds don't build nests to sleep in. They build a nest as a safe place to lay their eggs and to raise their young. A group of eggs is called a clutch. The ostrich lays the largest egg of any bird alive today, just over 3 pounds. Compare it to your average chicken egg. The huge Madagascar elephant bird has been extinct for 700 years, but whole eggs were found in swamps, tipping the scale at over 25 pounds. That's twice as heavy as any known dinosaur egg. Hummingbirds, of course, lay the smallest egg, usually the size of a small pea, weighing about 1/100th of an ounce. Most male and female birds take turns to sit on the eggs and keep them warm. Incubation time varies, but generally after about a month, the eggs hatch and the new young are ready to go off on their own. The adults begin to molt, replacing old feathers with new ones, and for an entire month they cannot fly and must seek shelter away from predators. By October, it's time again to migrate south to the winter homes. The journey is long and physically exhausting. Most birds migrate several thousand miles every year, and only a few will survive 2 or maybe 3 journeys. The Arctic tern migrates the longest, with a round trip from pole to pole of 25,000 miles. There are over 9,000 different varieties of birds, and only 10% of that variety live in North America. Still, for North Americans, that leaves over 900 different kinds of birds, more than even the most avid bird watcher is likely to see in a lifetime. There are all kinds of methods to categorize these creatures, but classification by habitat, water, land, forest, is very common. Plus, it's where we actually encounter these creatures. Ocean birds commonly make their nests at the edge of rocky cliffs. The guillemot just lays a single egg on the cliff edge and often holds the egg between its feet until it's hatched. Water birds at the ocean include cormorants, pelicans, puffins, plovers, sandpipers, gulls, terns, and the food-thieving frigate bird. Freshwater birds live by ponds, streams, rivers, and lakes that teem with insects, small fish, and vegetation. Some wade through the shallows or float on the surface like ducks. Others, like the kingfisher, plunge in, then return to the branch to eat their fish. Freshwater birds include the bittern, coots, cranes, geese, herons, loons, red-winged blackbirds, snipes, spoonbill, storks, swans, and ducks. Incidentally, a male duck is called a drake. It's the female that's called a duck. Common grassland and desert birds include the barn swallow, the house finch, partridges, Steller's jay, meadowlark, quails, pheasants, and grouse. Ostriches are the largest bird, standing over 8 feet tall, and the fastest two-legged runner, sprinting nearly 45 miles per hour. Roadrunners, on the other hand, have a top speed of only 17 miles per hour, chasing lizards and snakes. Coyotes have a top speed of nearly 30 miles per hour, almost twice the speed of a roadrunner, just in case you were wondering. The forest is home to a huge variety of birds. Black-capped chickadees, bluebirds, blue jays, bobwhite, cardinals, catbirds, crossbills, cowbirds, dark-eyed juncos, grosbeaks, hummingbirds, mockingbirds, and mourning doves. Forest and mountain birds typically build nests hidden inside tree trunks or high up inside the trees and branches. Other forest birds are the nuthatch and nutcracker, orioles, ovenbirds, purple martins, thrushes, warblers, wild turkeys, the yellow-bellied sapsucker, northern flicker, and woodpeckers. When a woodpecker is pecking for food, their head experiences 10 gravities of deceleration every time it snaps back. That's double the stress an astronaut experiences when they re-enter the atmosphere at over 17,000 miles an hour. Homing pigeons can find their home base over 600 miles away and fly nearly 50 miles an hour. The French military still keep homing pigeons on hand in case normal communication lines are destroyed. By the way, doves and pigeons are the same bird. Dove is simply the common name for a smaller pigeon. Hummingbirds like treed areas. While most birds flap their wings about 4 times per second, hummingbirds fly at 200 beats per second, which causes that distinctive humming sound. They weigh about the same as 1 penny and make tiny mouse-like squeaks. A hummingbird will fight much larger birds and outmaneuver any predator. Some birds seem to be just about everywhere, country, city, wherever. Like crows, ravens, robins, sparrows, chickens, house wrens, mourning doves, and starlings. In 1890, a bird society here in America thought that New York should be home to every bird ever mentioned in the writings of William Shakespeare, and the starling happened to be one of them. So, 40 starlings were released in New York City's Central Park, and since that time, starlings have nearly overrun the North American continent. They're like aggressive bird thugs, chasing out other birds, making a general nuisance of themselves. They've earned the reputation as the #1 bird pest here in America. Sparrows were also an imported bird and were introduced just a few years before the starlings. From an original 16 sparrows, today there's nearly 200 million house sparrows in America from coast to coast. But fortunately, sparrows have not become nearly the pest that starlings have. Birds of prey are known for their fierce and expert hunting abilities. Designed with exceptional eyesight, hearing, and razor-sharp talons, the birds of prey include eagles, falcons, owls, kestrels, hawks, harriers, and osprey. Vultures have fairly weak feet and bills, which cannot attack or carry off prey. They are designed to eat dead animals, which are called carrion. Vultures have no syrinx that allow other birds to sing or squawk. They only grunt, cackle, or make hissing noises. Some of the world's most colorful birds are found in tropical forests and are often referred to as tropical or exotic birds. They include flamingos, parrots, parakeets, cockatoos, toucans, scarlet macaws, guinea fowls, the African spoonbill, ibis, the bluebird of paradise, the African crowned crane, lyrebird, and exotic hummingbirds. There's even a jungle chicken, which looks very much like our unexotic domestic chickens. Many birds can mimic the songs of other birds. In fact, they can mimic almost any sound at all, including a chainsaw, car horns, piano concertos, people talking, other animals. Mynah birds, mockingbirds, and marsh warblers are examples of mimicking birds, but probably the most commonly held mimicking bird is a parrot. And a parrot can live over 80 years. So-called flightless birds include ostriches, emus, kiwis, and cassowaries. Most are runner birds with long, powerful legs, and most are missing that unusual keel bone, which is so necessary for flight. Flightless bird seems like a contradiction in terms. Birds, by definition, fly, right? But it appears that God made these birds exactly as we see them today, because He was pleased to make a few exceptions to the bird must fly rule. Penguins are also classified as flightless birds, but in what sense are they birds? They lay eggs, and their flippers have the appearance of wings, including miniature tightly packed feathers. Other than that, they are well insulated, highly streamlined, and virtually impenetrable to water. They swim 25 miles an hour, stay out to sea for weeks at a time, and dive to depths of 700 feet or more. They clearly do not fly. Their feathers aren't smooth but fluffy. Their so-called wings don't fold. The flipper bones are flat, forming paddles, and they have a natural layer of heavy fat for insulation. They are completely at home swimming underwater. Does that describe a bird or an aquatic creature? There always seems to be some exception to the rule, which may be God's way of telling us not to get too smug about our classification systems. Even God's handiwork will not fit into one tidy little box, let alone God Himself. Another difficulty in classification is bats, which are often pulled out of the flying category and categorized as mammals, along with whales and horses. But regardless of any subclassification, bats are clearly flying creatures, and as such, they were made alongside of all the other avian creatures on the fifth day. At least 50 species of birds are known to have existed at one time that are now thought to be extinct. A couple of the more famous examples of extinct birds include the dodo, which was a large flightless pigeon near Madagascar and other neighboring islands in the Indian Ocean. It was first recorded by Portuguese sailors in 1507 and was extinct within 100 years. Passenger pigeons have been gone nearly a century. Before their demise, it is believed there were more passenger pigeons than any other bird on Earth, in flocks more than 1 billion strong. In 1840, the American bird expert John Audubon wrote of a flock passing overhead that was a mile wide and took 3 hours to pass. Which is why the French named them pigeon of passage, or passenger pigeon, because they migrated or passed in such huge numbers. The last passenger pigeon in existence was named Martha and died in captivity at the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. In 1861, right after Darwin published his book, several unusual and controversial bird fossils were found in Germany. Each was about the size of a crow, with fully formed feathers, teeth, scales on its legs, and a bony tail. It was named Archaeopteryx from the word archaeo, meaning ancient, like in archaeology, and pteryx, which is Greek for wing, the ancient wing. The popular notion that lizard scales can become feathers, that front legs can become wings, or that mouths can become beaks is without any evidence in the fossil record. It exists only in our imaginations. Archaeopteryx has no scales becoming feathers, or anything becoming anything else. It is a perching bird with fully formed feathers and fully formed scales on its legs. Insects are the other creatures